So the objective of the panel was to look at how we can embed security into an organization's culture. I think the thing that was highlighted was the issue of the brand, the security brand, and the brand of the individuals within security. So that was identified as a potential barrier. I think the other one that was identified was the issue of does awareness actually result in a change in behavior? And the third one would be actually about embedding security in the existing processes and procedures within an organization already. People recognize the importance of doing it, but I think generally there isn't a one-size-fits-all solution that's going to address people's needs, which is why the panel was brought together, because you've got a number of people who have their own way of addressing that within the organizations that they've worked for. I think the interesting thing that came from that is actually there are some similarities in everybody's approach, which should be reassuring to everybody, because maybe those similarities are where everybody should be looking to start their campaign of trying to educate people and to get them to change their behavior and to develop an appropriate culture. The real answer about why I ended up here at Information Security revolved around an interesting narrative where I met an individual who was interviewing me for a particular role, and I happened to notice that directly behind him was a picture of a windsurfer. Now, I also recognized the picture from the same magazine that I read. So we discussed that magazine, windsurfing, our passion, our shared values and beliefs that came from that. And that made up probably 90% of the interview. And in the last 10% of the interview, and this was stage one of the interview, we talked about the actual role. And in that, I effectively said to him that I felt that actually looking at security, the key thing was going to be, it was a new market. How do you create a compelling story and narrative that any audience, stakeholder is going to be interested in? And that seemed to get me through to the second interview. I think the interesting thing is, and we alluded to this in the panel, the challenge of you can make somebody aware, but doesn't mean they're going to influence their behavior. And one thing we didn't get to discussing was actually the process of how people make decisions. And when you understand how people make decisions, you then sort of start to understand that if you present a series of facts or information to an individual, most people would assume that they will logically interpret that in a way that they come to the same answer as you. But actually, and the one thing we did allude to in the panel was what you can learn from marketing is that actually a lot of people's logic is overridden by values and emotions and experiences. Like a lot of the people we're trying to help educate to make more positive security decisions, their values and emotions aren't necessarily in line with security necessarily. And I think that sets a challenge for us in terms of we need to understand what those values and emotions are, we need to incorporate them into our messages, and then we're more likely to get people to actually exert a discretionary effort to comply with policy and procedure. And that's tying back to the story of the windsurfing, shared values, emotions, experiences enables us to have a much more engaging conversation.